I'm Jeffrey Siegel, the host of the Mystic Journey podcast. I would like to welcome you and thank you for joining us. Today, we look to enlighten and enliven you with a thought-provoking discussion with one of the community's most successful and inspiring individuals. Everyone has a story, a life journey, a mystic journey. Today, our guests will share with you their personal journey, along with some of their secrets and some of the tools they utilize to get where they are today. Sit back and enjoy our conversation and look forward to being uplifted and emboldened with a positive discussion that may just propel you onto a new path or the next step in your own mystic journey. Well, hi everybody. This is Jeffrey Siegel, your host for the Mystic Journey podcast, where we're going to explore the mystic journey of another amazing individual who we think will uplift you and maybe really hopefully inspire you to take the next step on your own mystic journey. Today, we have with us an amazing, incredible woman, Sangeeta Kaur. Sangeeta is an award-winning, Grammy-winning Vietnamese artist. In fact, she's the very first Vietnamese singer to have won a Grammy. She's released multiple award-winning albums and is even the producer of another album. She's done collaborations with people, John Anderson of the band Yes, Stuart Copeland, and other Grammy-winning artists. As she says, her life's mission is to create and share music that brings joy and positive transformation to the listener. I have to say before we begin that Sangeeta and I have known each other for we go back quite a while, although we haven't seen or talked to each other for a few years through the COVID time. But Sangeeta came and performed at Mystic Journey at our Crystal Gallery a number of years ago, and it was an amazing experience. Sangeeta, she sings opera and does mantra singing. I don't know, she'll tell more about the probably the better title for that, but just an incredible woman, an incredible singer, and an incredibly diverse, amazing voice and mind. And so with that, I want to say, hi, Sangeeta, how are you?
Hi, Jeffrey. It's so good to be here with you. I am doing amazingly. And I'm just so excited that we get to, after all these years, catch up in this way. And it's so beautiful and so impromptu. And thank you so much for having me.
Well, you're so welcome, and really, it's an honor for me, and I'm very touched that you would agree to do this and spend a little bit of time with me. So, as you know, I mean, this is called the Mystic Journey podcast, and what I'd like to do for the time that we have together here is to explore your mystic journey and to really delve into and get into where you've traveled in terms of your life and gotten to the point where you are. I mean, I can always start with sort of so did you ever expect that you would be a Grammy award-winning artist that travels the world and sings opera and mantras?
Never, ever in my life did I imagine that this was really a possibility. When you're younger, growing up, and you hear about the Grammys or the Oscars, or you hear about any of that, it feels almost so far reached, like it's just a dream. It's something that it doesn't happen to someone like you. So answer to your question, no, absolutely not. And I think
Go
go ahead. I think even as, as I became a more spiritual being, it was actually even one of the last things you imagined, even more so, because you get so far from the worldly things. And so the fact that it did happen this year, I feel like there's so many stories and energy behind it and miracles behind it. It's kind of like this culmination of everything that's happened in my life from as a child up until this very moment right now as we're having this conversation.
Wow. So Where did you grow up? Well, if you could give our listeners just a little bit of background as to, where you spent your childhood and how you or when you first had the feelings of wanting to sing.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in California, so I'm native here. Um, I grew up in, I don't know if you know the area, it's called Rancho Cucamonga. So in the way San Bernardino valleys, in my first years of life, with a very large Vietnamese family who all came around 75 or mid or early 80s from Vietnam after the fall of Saigon. So I grew up this little child learning Vietnamese, English, sort of completely immersed in these cultures. And then I eventually moved to LA, moved to Orange County, just kind of been all over Southern California. Um, and I have to say, when I first discovered that vibration of music that really like touched my soul, and when I kind of had this exploration with it vocally, and my mind was sort of blown wide open from the sound of so many different unique auditory experiences. It was at a very young age. um, I I think my mom even told me I was humming and singing like when I was like 3, as
Wow.
far as she could remember, and just hearing things and singing it back and just really having a liking to music. But, so many children do actually. It's not an unusual thing. We're very high sensitive when we're itty bitty like that. And so, but for me personally, I remembered the first time I actually heard my voice, like experienced it. We can sing, we do all these things, but when did you actually experience it and hear it and notice it? I think I was maybe 6 years old.
Wow.
And I've told the story so many times, but it's one of those first memories that, yeah, I just can't forget. It was when I first heard The Sound of Music, the
Uh-huh.
musical, the Sound of Music. And I don't know if you know the story behind the story of The Sound of Music, but there's all these beautiful children in that movie and in that show, and they're all singing from
Yes.
all ages. And Aunt Julie Andrews is in that movie, and she's like the mother of musical. Her voice is just this angelic sound. So I was so intrigued by seeing these little kids singing, and I was wanting to imitate them, and I was so drawn. And I think I've watched it over, 30 times, 40 times, and just memorized all the songs and the nuances, even that the little kids would sing them. And I started to hear my voice, and I actually was like, well, that sounds kind of pretty. you
When
know?
you say you started to hear your voice, what exactly do you mean?
Because I think when you're just a little tiny child and you're singing, you're not paying attention to your voice. You're just kind of singing, and you're happy and you're in the spirit of singing. But I actually heard my voice one day, what it sounded like, and I took notice, like, because I'm hearing these kids sing and it's so beautiful. And then I sing and I'm like, wow, I kind of sound like that. I started to like notice that. And I was like,
Hmm.
I really like my voice, and it feels so good to sing, and taking notice of how I was feeling. It was like the awareness, having the awareness finally, right? And so as I became more and more aware of my voice and how it was making me sing and how it was making me feel, I think that's when I just couldn't stop, and I wanted to learn more and imitate more and hear more different types of music. So yeah, it really started at such a young age.
Well,
And now I know why.
oh, well, I'll get back to that as to how you know why, but it sounds well, not sounds. I mean, you're one of those rare human beings who got in touch or into alignment with with their passion and with their, what some people would call their true purpose at a very young age.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, but it wasn't always a clear vision, and it wasn't always a smooth ride. Um
That
so
was going to
it's
be
yeah.
my next question. Is, as you then started to grow up, I mean, and you started going through school, were there times where you were, or from your family, being pulled in different directions from this path?
Yeah, so just overall, like I've been through sort of like these very a lot of these beautiful healing journeys. And so, as you know, we go through a lot of self-discovery, and we go back to the past. We go and look back at our childhood experiences, our relationships with our parents and our families, and even looking at our relationship with ourselves. And so when I, went through these self explorations and going back and revisiting all those times, I recall so many um, different things that I was a witness to, and things that I experienced internally, externally, the challenges of being in this family environment of my family, who are just first time in this new country, and trying to learn the language, trying to learn the customs, trying to teach their children, keep the culture, the Vietnamese culture, as far as myself. And it's there's a lot of challenges that are ingrained into you as well, and belief systems. So I wasn't always supposed to be doing music. Like, I should have grown up, as far as in my parents' eyes, doing something else that's going to bring a much more abundant life and have money and security. And it makes total sense as far as where they came from. They came with nothing, and
Hmm.
they almost died in traveling from Vietnam to America, trying to start a new life. And it's a miracle that they survived, and I'm only here because they survived such um, intense experiences to even be here in the first place. Um, so just that alone, sort of ingrained in your subconscious mind, in my subconscious mind, it's everything's about survival, survival, survival. But I feel like my karmic makeup, and my even in my astrology, and even in my soul's journey, it was supposed to happen that way. I was supposed to grow up with a very, very humble lifestyle, and a very hardworking family environment, so that I can develop those skills myself. Because doing what I do and what artists do now, it's not an easy journey, and you just kind of have to be really self-sufficient and understand truly what you want, and who you are, and what is your soul's purpose, and can you carry that out in the most graceful way, and without any fear, with being that dreamer, being the artist, at the same time being grounded. So I feel like all my life's journey has given me these tools, and there's so many more stories that I don't think 1 hour we can get into. But I have to say, these tools really made me who I am, and I don't know how it happened. I feel like I've had angels that have looked over me to keep me clear, because some of these life experiences could have just took you know taken me off the rail and put me somewhere else, and I wouldn't be here today doing what I'm doing. So I do feel like I've had this guidance, and this blessing to be able to see that, and to listen, and to truly listen, even during turmoil in my life as a teenager. you know, I grew up in an environment that was actually quite hostile. I'm Vietnamese American, and I grew up in an environment while I was, in Orange County during the years where there was so much gang violence, for example, and segregation, between
Hmm.
between Latinos, blacks, whites, Asians. I mean, I went through all of that too, and it was just crazy. It's crazy to think back at that. That I had that window of experience to actually witness and experience violence in that way. So having coming out of this very hostile experience, I've always, music has been like my guiding and light and my savior. And that's always, and I believe and I know now that that is like my true protection, and that has been a part of my soul's makeup since I was born in this life. This is my journey, and it's, my angels have helped me to see it very clearly, and something else has helped me to stay on track with that, even when it was really difficult and challenging. Um, and I just feel blessed every day. I feel like everything is a miracle. And one thing that I have to say is, again, somehow I was able to listen and pay attention. And that's something that I feel is so hard for us, especially in this world of so many distractions and, things that make us feel very insecure, very fearful. It's hard to see clearly and hard to listen with all of those things around. But I believe if we do that self work, that we can come to that place of truly listening, and we can come to this place of truly falling and being on this clear path. And then that just brings joy to you, to everyone around you. But it takes the work, at some point you have to just do it. like, and I know you understand this, and that's why we have community. That's why we have these conversations. That's why we're here on this podcast. We're helping each other, reminding each other, and supporting one another, and it's just really beautiful.
Your words are beautiful and moving to me. So when would you say you really began to listen? I mean, I'd like to explore a little bit about, there's that time. I guess that a couple things when we're all going through, our education from high school to university, and then probably you into your music career, and then at some point, you know some spiritual event can occur. You talk a lot about, to me, when you're talking about listening, it really goes to, meditating, but I don't always like to use that word, but really deep listening to the inner voice, and how all of these things during growth of our younger transformative years, and we're always transformative, but our younger transformative years, and how it leads us to the path where we ultimately take, at least as we move into beyond the educational years. So maybe
Yeah.
you can talk a little bit about, from high school to university, and really getting into music, and how your spiritual path blended in.
Yeah. So, I just, as you're talking, I'm just sort of, all these thoughts are coming to me, but, um, you know, I feel like this is a moment right now, as we're having this conversation, for anyone and whoever is listening. It's like, it's sort of that one thing that you just have to take that step, and it can start from something so little that then grows into something so big. And so, one thing I just want to add before we get into that whole topic is, it's for us it could be baby steps. Like, I know that nowadays we want to have these like grand experiences right away, and when we don't, we feel like, well, what's the point, right? Or we give up. But it's all these small steps, and those small steps are seedlings. If you can even allow yourself to take these small steps of, if you're curious about meditation but you're not really good at it, and what even does that mean? You can't sit still. Oh, well, it's fine for the moment, right? But like, at least try, or read a book, or find a way to educate ourselves, or spark curiosity, and that is enough to be the beginning of this amazing journey and path of awareness and listening and paying attention, right? So, and I think once we have those little beginnings, it's just going to grow into
Awesome.
something huge, right? Like, we can't expect to have these huge awakening moments or realizations just overnight. It just happens. And it could be a beautiful gradual thing that one day you wake up, you're like, whoa, how did I get here? Then you're like, oh yeah, because I remember that one day I was listening to this podcast, and she said to open a book and read something, and I opened it, and from that day forward I was never the same. It's like, It just takes these small little baby steps for these
And,
big moments to happen in time, and we have to be patient.
and sometimes those small baby steps, you don't even know. Sometimes you don't even know that they're occurring.
Yeah,
And and
exactly.
then you look back, whether it's, a month later or a year later or further later, and you're like, wow, that really,
Yeah.
that really, affected me and impacted me and, potentially, led me, to where I am now, to
Yeah,
this place on my path.
exactly. It's just, paying attention to these little things. And that's all that really takes to like break that seal, to break ourselves open. It's a tiny little crack. Like I like to say, with the music that I do, the work that I do, it's not about trying to change anybody or it's not trying to convert anyone to anything. Things have worked for me and we're just sharing, and I hope in hopes that these little things will just kind of put a little crack in you, a crack in people. And from that point forward, it's up to them, right? It's like you've been cracked open this little tiny bit. Let's see what happens. Like
And
it's
like you
then
said,
it's
and to,
yeah.
to not fear, to not fear
Yeah.
stepping through the crack.
Yeah. To not fear that. And even though as the crack gets bigger and bigger and things start to open up, a lot of stuff start to come through. And maybe it's things that maybe it does bring up fear though, that things that you don't want to look at. But that's when we have to say the things that create the most fear in us are the things we actually should look at. And when we're cracked open, we're going to be exposed to more and more of that. More and more of that's going to surface. And it's just inevitable. And it's part of this journey, a part of the journey of healing and awakening and paying attention and seeing. And then once we can allow those things to happen, it just puts us more into alignment to be able to live our truth, to be able to live our soul's mission, to do the things that bring us joy, which brings so many other people joy. It's just part of this journey. I mean, it seems and sounds so hard and maybe unattainable sometimes for some, but again, it's just these baby steps. And I was just so blessed that a lot of these baby steps happened when I wasn't paying attention and in the middle of my journey as a singer and a student of classical music. Like, I was in university and conservatory studying opera, which is amazing and beautiful, but it's a hard environment. It's a real worldly hard environment that really pushes your limits and your buttons, and it's triggering and it's revealing and you're very vulnerable because as an artist, if you're not vulnerable, forget it. Don't even think about doing it. And somehow this journey of really deep music discovery and spirituality kind of came parallel for me. And I
Yeah.
feel, yeah.
No, go ahead.
And I feel like I really discovered that the singing and the music and the techniques of singing was really my yoga at the time that I wasn't practicing yoga, right? As we know
Hmm.
yoga to be. And it was all of the awareness and the singing and the body and the breath that those were my little steps. Those were my seeds that I started to notice. I feel amazing when I sing. I don't feel good when I don't sing. What's up with that? And then
That's
as I'm,
listening.
yeah. And then I realized this is yoga. This is my breath work. This is my self awareness. This is me becoming very subtle in my body, becoming very subtle in my breath, becoming very subtle in my mind in order to tie all these elements together to create this sound current that comes out of my body, and as I'm starting to just learn about yoga and practice, it starts to feel so similar. It was so beautiful to see this two parallel universes kind of happening at the same time, um, and just paying attention to that.
And it's interesting too, because I think a lot of times we judge ourselves and you can say, well, I'm I'm doing this and it feels like yoga, and I'm just using your sort of your example, but I should be doing regular, what we would call standard yoga, or the yoga that, the physical yoga. But
Yeah,
everybody isn't the same, and everybody, I think it's important, like we've said, to listen to your mind and your body, and to travel the path that resonates with you, and don't let anyone judge that, or allow the words of others to take you from what feels right in you.
exactly. Exactly. And then, of course, to not self judge, because again, you just said we're all so different, and yes, we all need something different. Actually, certain styles of yoga is not always good for this individual or that
Mhm.
individual. They need something different that works for their bodies, works for it at the place that they are in their lives. Sometimes things can be too intense for someone, and they need something a lot more restorative, or they need something that builds more inner work, or getting in touch with the body, getting in touch with the breath, like the littlest things that become such huge elements of transformation for people. So yeah, we need to just know what works for us. There's never one thing. And if there's anyone that ever says, this is the way and this is the only way, we already know that's the wrong way. Right.
For sure, for sure.
So,
I mean, I'm the furthest thing from a singer there can be, and I've
are
grown up
you
and lived.
sure?
I'm sure, because I've listened to my voice. Um, but I've grown up in Los Angeles, and I've lived here the vast majority of my life. And there, and certainly through living here, and through being at the Mystic Journey bookstore, Mystic Journey Crystals, people come in, who are traveling. Let's just call it the artistic path, whether it's singing or painting or writing, and look, all of these paths certainly have challenges. It's not, it's not the most everyday secure path to travel. And so I want to ask, I would, and I'm presuming here, but I would presume that at various points, along your path to let's say winning the Grammy, or really becoming a successful artist, there were times of challenge, and times of doubt for you. And my question is, how did you confront those? How did you address those and overcome those periods of challenge and doubt?
yeah. So, oh my gosh, I feel like if any year at all, this was the year that I won a Grammy with my group of incredible friends, who we did this album together. This is the year of celebration for us. At the same time, there had been so many things that happened this year as well. This is just this year alone, right? Like we have
Mhm.
challenges all the time, and it's a good thing. It doesn't always feel good, but it's a good thing that it happens. Um, I think through the work that I've been able to do spiritually has really the one thing that is so ingrained in me, that even as a human being, when I'm going through something really challenging, really difficult, I need to check back. It's my reference point. So when I'm starting to feel off, ungrounded, starting to get in my head, getting these emotional moments of unclarity or anger, or um, uh, just frustration, all these negative things that are happening, being judgmental of others or myself. I already know this is one thing I was taught. When you feel really bad about something, if you're starting to feel really bad, we're not looking at the situation and the experience the correct way, because there's always a lesson in everything that's happening right in front of you. I've been taught, and I believe, and I've been a witness to, there's nothing that happens to you that's not supposed to. And even though it could be extremely horrific, there is something there. There's a opportunity right there for us to be able to evolve and to grow, and to then help others to grow.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, there's this saying. I mean, everything happens for a reason. But I mean,
yeah,
my addition to that saying is that everything happens for a good reason or a positive
yeah,
reason. It's
yes,
sometimes it takes a little while to see it or for it to actually unfold,
yeah.
but it is there.
It is there. And, so I feel like we have to we have to find our own personal tools. And this happens as we're doing the work, as we're doing our personal inner work. We begin to find the tools that really help us to come back to ourselves, to come back to our clearer mind, to come back to our hearts, even just to come back to our sanity, to our breath, to like get those shakes and shivers off so we can think clearly. So some of my tools have been to really just check in with myself and say, okay, this is happening right now in front of me. I'm dealing with this, or I'm dealing with this person or this situation. I feel really crappy. I feel like a terrible person. I feel like this, whatever it is, right? What's really happening? I have to ask myself, what is really happening? What is the lesson right now? What is the lesson that I'm supposed to learn right now? If I can always remind myself that there's a lesson to learn, then I refrain from blaming. I refrain from pointing fingers. I refrain from being more upset. I refrain from being judgmental. I refrain from saying things that I'm gonna regret.
Mhm.
I refrain from thinking things that are negative, that are not true. So I have to always ask, what am I supposed to be learning in this really uncomfortable moment right now? And sometimes I do say, God, Buddha, Kuan Yin, Mother Mary, Tara, whoever it
Mhm.
is, angels, mom, dad, best friend, I don't know. Please help me to understand what's going on, the truth of this situation. And I think just asking that question, it helps for that energy to come through and to reveal that truth for you. But when we keep on kind of going in circles and circles and circles in the story, in the situation, in the feelings, in the thoughts, we just go down the rabbit hole and then we create more problems, you know?
Yeah.
So just checking in with ourselves. Like the music industry, for example, the entertainment industry, it's crazy. You will encounter so many different types of personalities and characters and scenarios, and we just have to try not to get caught up in that, and always come back to remembering why we are artists in the first place. Why we chose this path, why our soul came here to do these things, to do this work. We just can't forget that. And we just have to keep checking in, check in, check in. Like if it's a daily thing that you have to do it.
Yeah.
When we're triggered that much or that little, just constantly check in, ask, what am I supposed to learn here? You know, and then also finding ways, because that energy's there, those thoughts are there, they're not just going to disappear. We're human. Finding ways to exert that energy, that negative heaviness, finding a tool that works for you. Like for me, it would be singing or yoga or jumping up and down or going out and taking a walk, but
Mhm.
finding a way to release that energy. The more and more we just kind of hold this resentment, anger, frustration, whatever it is, sadness, it just builds up, and we become more cloudy, and it just gets harder and harder to deal with.
From your words and certainly from your music that I know, you 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 have been on a what I would call a spiritual path, and when we first started, you talked about being or becoming a spiritual being, and so when did your spiritual being or your turn to spirituality, when did that first open to you and begin to become an important aspect of your life and your music?
I think really that the point of when I chose it, when I was aware enough, when I came to
Mhm.
that place of awareness, and because I feel like all of our lives from as a baby until now, there's always spiritual moments, but we don't see them all the time. And we're just kind of guided, somehow we're taken care of and guided. But there comes a point that you do realize, like, okay, enough is enough. That life is not the life I want. That experience, I never want that to happen again. There's something more. It's that moment when you realize there's something more. There's something wrong with the situation right now. Okay, I need to look at this and I want to understand. It's like that moment of wanting to know more, wanting to learn more, and having the awareness that you have the power to do that through resources and study and community. So that moment for me happened when I was living in Italy for a couple of years after I had finished school. And there was a moment when I was like, okay, it's time to go. It just feels like I'm being pushed to go now. And so from there, I moved to New York City. And I was still in the mind frame of, okay, I'm ready to go to New York City. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get an apartment. And I'm going to use all my money to study, to get my voice lessons, to coach, to audition, to, work the circuit for the opera world. And that was really what I went there to do. And within 3 weeks that I landed in New York City, I met all of like my yoga teachers and my meditation teachers, my spiritual community within those first 3 weeks.
Wow.
At the time I had no clue. I mean, that's not what I was intentionally looking for, but it was time. It was like
Mhm.
some seeds ripened, and it was like a waterfall, because it was like one person after another, and then this teacher and this meditation class, and then this happened. And it was like, my heart and mind just blew open as soon as I went to this studio that still exists now in New York called Three Jewels. It's a Tibetan Buddhist center. And I went with a new friend that I had met, and I sat in meditation, and I realized in the room there were these young meditators my age. They're all in, like, at the time, mid 20s, 30s, 40s. They were just these young, spirited people meditating. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And as I'm getting to know them, they're artists and entrepreneurs and dreamers and, business people, accountants. I mean, they were doing Wall Street, like all sorts of characters and careers, but they were all there to meditate. And I remember Punsuk, who is still my best friend and teacher till this day, was holding a class that day. And something he was saying, what happened in the meditation, I felt like it was words and an experience that I had been waiting for. It's one of those moments that it felt like you've heard this before, but you
Mhm.
never had words to put it yourself, and someone was saying it for you. And there was just so much reveal and truth that I couldn't, it was mind opening and heart opening, and I couldn't stop wanting to know more and hearing more and coming back. So it just, every week, every Fridays I'd come back for meditation. So it was like, once I was exposed, I was completely pulled in for like ever.
And did that start to change your musical path?
And that completely changed my musical path. I started recording mantras with my former producer who was in New York. And even I didn't know what they meant. I was just pulled in. He said, will you record this? Will you record that mantra? I said, okay, okay. And spending hours and hours in the studio chanting, not knowing really what I was chanting. But when you chant for hours, it transforms you.
Yep.
And so I was doing this without really understanding what it was doing to me. And so I feel like all these transformations that were happening inside of me, it was from chanting these mantras and doing these meditations and just kind of going with it. Um, and that was really my true biggest moment of like awareness, and I made the choice. This is what I want. I feel so in alignment. I feel so energized. I feel so much bliss and so much joy. What is all of this? And so I spent years just exploring and practicing.
And
Um,
let me just add in, it's interesting that when you tell this story, because I have a similar but different story. I mean, my spiritual path. Um, I was introduced by someone to a spiritual order, and I had no idea really what they were or what they taught. I read something online and I thought, wow, it sounds interesting. And they had these weekly lessons, and I was like, okay, I'll start the weekly lesson. And so
that's how it starts.
back in the day, right? Back in the day, they mailed. There weren't computers then, and so they mailed the lesson. And I read that first lesson, and I'm like, that's it. This is exactly what I've felt. But as you said, I hadn't been able to put it into words, and there were the
Yeah.
words. And for me, it was on paper, and for you, it was with somebody. So again, it goes back to this whole like it can come in different forms and in different ways, and again it's a being open, and for you, and when I heard you say it goes back when you were in Italy to listening to your inner voice that it was time to leave, and acting on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we are all capable. This is the thing. Being a human, being reincarnating to be a human is such a high level incarnation. I don't know if most people know that, but we have so many abilities. We're able to think, we're able to feel, we have these senses and um, these dimensions within us that is just extraordinary. And so it's like we all have this capability to get that deep and to connect to our most subtle selves, our
Mhm.
souls. We have the capability to be psychic. We have the capability you know, to be able to telepathically communicate. We have the capability to see beyond this human realm. It's just unless we know that and we tap into that and we practice that and we say yes to it, it's
Say
sort of
yes.
non-existent, but it's dormant,
Right. And
and yeah,
yeah, and saying yes to it. I mean,
and
when
saying
you
yes.
when if someone has that even that little inkling, that little the bell, ding ding ding, something just starts to go off to be open to taking that first step to see, ooh, what is this really about?
Yeah.
Why do I have this sudden connection,
Yeah. And also just trusting ourselves. I think, we know that this is the age of real self empowerment, really trusting our voice, trusting our hearts, trusting our intuition, our thoughts, what we're hearing, and, and, and developing that sense of that we are our own teachers, we are our own masters. Like we should always ask for help. Like if you're not sure about something, to call in someone who can to advise you, a spiritual advisor, but to come back to that place of knowing that we can figure this out. We can trust our intuition. The more we give power to our own gifts in that way, the more it's going to grow and expand, and develop. And we have to really trust ourselves and believe that we have that capability. You
And let
know,
me just say, I believe that, I've had a few teachers, what I would call teachers in my life that have led me and given me guidance and instruction to bring me to where I am. And there have been times where I've asked for these teachers to come in. And, people they may have never had a teacher, or
yeah,
they've never experienced being with someone who they consider a teacher. But to all of those of you who are out there and listening, you can ask the universe to bring someone like this to you,
yeah,
and to again be to be full of faith, to be trusting of the universe that this can come to you in a way. We use the sort of traditional word praying. which is similar to that. But you can pray, you can ask the universe to bring you this teacher, this guide,
Hmm.
and it can happen and change one's life.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I feel like at some point in our lives, we do want to have that guidance, and that's totally okay. And we should have, and that might be a best friend, that might be a sangha, a community of other like-minded people where you can have open conversations and, exploratory moments with them to be able to share what we're going through, what you're going through spiritually. And trust me, there's so many people going through it. And
Yeah.
sometimes they do feel alone, and so community is one of the most powerful things to have, a very trustworthy spiritual community that you can talk to. And I just had this memory of one of my friends and teachers of the Tibetan Buddhist lineage. He said in one of our classes, and it was the most beautiful thing, he said, please, please, he was begging us. He said, please listen. This is such an important course today. Please pay attention and please listen as openly as you can to everything I'm about to teach you. Because when we come back in another lifetime, I'm going to need you to remember so you can teach me again.
Mm.
So the point is, we're all teaching each other and we're reminding one another. There's nobody bigger, greater, more powerful than you, or you more powerful than anyone. We all went through this many times over and over, and we're just here to support each other and to remind one another. And so that's sort of a big key point, is when we do meet a community, when we do meet teachers, because there's some people who just have that charisma, who have very special way to communicate, and that's their gift, to be able to communicate and to be able to share. That was their calling in this lifetime. They're there to share and listen and to support. So at any, the people you want to surround yourself are supportive. They're learning from you just as much as you're learning from them.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I want to ask, because I think our listeners may be interested in knowing, because you've brought up Buddhism a couple times, and you use some Hindu terms, and I if you could talk a little bit about your how you were raised in terms of your what we would call traditional religious um, upbringing, but then how that has evolved over time, and where you sort of find yourself now in terms of your spiritual being.
Yeah, I love that question. So I think you know this, and so many people who do practice know that up until you're about the age 11, so your crown is so open. We're so connected to source. So everything that we experience, actually the negative, the positive, the spiritual experiences or the non-spiritual experiences, they integrate and they become you. It molds you. And that's what you're going to carry as you become an adult and a young adult and all that, right? So I was so blessed. Actually, at the time I didn't think so, because it was so confusing and it was so troublesome. But
Yeah.
when I was a kid, so my dad comes from a family of very, very devoted Buddhists of the Hinayana lineages of Buddhism. And then my mother's side, that she comes from a very, very devout Catholic
Oh,
tradition.
wow.
So I was baptized as Catholic, but I had this other side of my family who's hardcore Buddhist. And so
Interesting.
I would go on Saturdays to the Buddhist temple with my dad's side. And then on Sundays, I would go to church with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like fully experiencing both these worlds. And as a child, I was like, ah, I'm so sick of this. It didn't make sense. I
Yeah.
wasn't connected to any of either of them. Like,
Right.
I didn't feel either of them were my path, right? Or at the time, you're not even thinking about that. I just didn't like it. But because
Not
I was,
many kids do.
yeah, the lucky ones, I think. I don't know. But, I look back and knowing that everything you're exposed to at that age is so crucial. And I'm so grateful that as a baby, as a child, I was exposed to the Buddha, and I was exposed to Jesus, and I was exposed to the rituals and the practices and the beliefs, like, because then it was there. It was there for me for when I would evolve as an adult, and I can use it or I don't. But what happened was I went through kind of a different back and forth. Like, there was a moment I was super into psychedelics, and like I wanted to explore, and I went into, LSD and like all this stuff, and was writing and journaling and going through my spiritual journey as a teenager. And then all of a sudden at age 21, I became like born again Catholic. And
Wow.
I went to church. My ex partner at the time, his family was very Catholic, and his mother became my catechism teacher at the age of 21. And it was because when I went to church with them, there were these two priests, Father John and I think Father Larry, I can't remember. There was something in them that was so pure. And it didn't matter if it was whatever religion, it's the
Hmm.
person and how much they are, how pure they are actually. And their sermons, it just flowed through me, and there's something really divine that happened. I started to feel connected to spirit in such a beautiful way. My heart was so open. I was like, what is going on? So I chose to become Catholic again. So I went through confirmation. I did all of that. I went the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
But it was like a different experience. One, I chose, and two, there was something very mystical that I was going through. And then that lasted about a good, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. And that's when I started practicing a little bit of yoga, getting curious about meditation, went through my whole sort of other journey. I discovered later, what was it, 8 years later, Tibetan Buddhism.
Hmm.
This is when I was in New York City. What happened, my mystical experience with Tibetan Buddhism felt the same as that mystical experience I had as a Catholic. It was this mind opening, heart opening, just knowing that there was this divine truth and something like so beyond us. And I realized I'm having the same feeling, but it's not with the Catholic Church. This is with the Buddhist. And then my exploration with Kundalini Yoga and becoming a Kundalini Yoga teacher, and then studying Hatha and Vinyasa and Ashtanga, like, it just all made so much sense to me. That's when I realized it is all the same thing. It is all one thing. It is all
Hallelujah.
connected.
Yeah.
There's not one thing better than the other or one thing right and wrong. There's this universal divine truth and spirituality, that ties into everything, right? And so I realized, wow, I lived sort of these both. I was exposed to both as a child. I studied both. I practiced both deeply, and yet I don't feel like I'm Catholic. I'm not Buddhist. I'm not Catholic. I'm not anything. I really truly now feel I'm just a spiritual being,
That is
connected to source, connected to the universe, connected to you, connected to everybody, connected to all of the experiences of this world, the good and the bad. It's just this really clear knowing for me.
that is incredibly beautiful. I mean, and it's interesting. I mean, I like to use I guess a visual analogy in terms of spirituality and paths, where I describe it as a wheel, and there are all these spokes leading to the center of the wheel.
Yes.
But the center of the wheel it's the center. It's the same for all, and it's just we're walking different paths to get there.
Yes, absolutely. And that's great. It's perfectly good, right? Because, like, again, same thing with picking a practice, picking a style of yoga or a style of some sort of building your tools. It's one thing is not for everyone. I feel like
Right.
those who practice one thing, they need that in their lives at that moment. And it's beautiful as long as their heart is in the right place, as long as they're, thinking it's for the goodness of their families and their communities and for humanity and for beings. They take care of themselves and they take care of others. What's wrong with that, right?
Right.
So there's not one wrong or right practice or religion. It's just where we are in our evolution and in our transformation and in our incarnations. So it's all beautiful as long as we're growing as we're growing as a better person
And
from it.
as you
And
said,
that's
I
all that
mean,
matters.
it can change over time,
It
and
changes so much over time. Are you
right,
kidding
and
me?
right. Right. It's almost inevitable. And to, I would like, our listeners again to really take that to heart and to allow yourselves to be open and be flexible and to go with the flow, go with what is happening at that moment and realize that, you know, again, there are different ways and there is no right or wrong. And what might be
Right.
right at one time may be a completely different thing may be right for you at another time.
Absolutely. And it's just beautiful to be able to even understand all of these different practices deeply if we really devote ourselves to each moment, because you're that makes us appreciate and love one another on a much deeper level and understand our differences, our choices of our spiritual practice, like, and choices of our lives, like what we do in our life. Like, we're not supposed to be the same, but we're supposed to respect one another. We're supposed to love each other for our differences and honor each other for our differences and learn from one another. If we're all trying to be the same or have everyone convert to the same thing, it's sort of like, are we really going to learn anything anymore? And this is the human school. Like, we're here to learn. We're here to learn and grow until our very, very last breath in this body.
Wow, Sangeeta, just again, beautiful, beautiful words. Believe it or not, we're just about at the end of our hour together. It's
It's
it's,
never enough.
it's never enough. It absolutely
Yeah,
flew by.
but it's so
I
beautiful. Thank you.
Well, it's my thanks to you. It's completely mutual. Look, if people want to find you, to find your music, to find other words of wisdom that or thoughts of wisdom that you have to say and to put out to the world, where is the best place for them to find you?
Yes, so musically, you're gonna find so much. All of my music is always geared to helping people to find clarity, to find joy, to awaken, and in the most subtle ways through my music. You can hear a lot of it on mostly every streaming platform, like Spotify, or you can go on Apple Music, YouTube. I'm on Instagram, Sangeeta Kaur Music, Facebook, Sangeeta Kaur Music. My website is sangeetakarmusic.com. You can follow me there for events and just kind of things that are going on, news, updates. But really, I think I would invite our guests to explore the music and the sound current, because I think that's where my heart really lies and where my life's calling really lies. And yeah, I'd love that.
Oh, great. Well, again, Sangeeta, I want to thank you so much for spending this hour with me and with our guests, and for everyone who's joined us today. I want to say thank you to you as well. I look forward to having you back for other podcasts. And if you have any questions about what you heard today, or would like to share, your thoughts on the podcast in general, you can reach out to me directly at jeff@mysticjourneyla.com. And until the next time, please stay positive, follow your heart, and as Sangeeta said throughout our hour together, listen, and pay attention and be awake. It's a beautiful life, and enjoy. Bye, all. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you for joining us today on the Mystic Journey podcast. We hope you enjoyed it and look forward to having you back again for our next podcast. If you have any questions about what you heard on the podcast today, or would like to share your thoughts on the podcast in general, please feel free to email me at jeff@mysticjourneyla.com. Until next time, stay positive, see the beauty in all things, and keep your mind focused on creating exactly what you want in your life.